Hello, Gary and Don. Gary, these are your carburetors that Don whipped up on. I've let them, since we tested them yesterday, they have sat out overnight, and we did have close to freezing weather, and so we got a cold start on these carburetors. They have not been run since yesterday afternoon. All right, I have read the report that you sent, that what Don did, and everything he did was fine. And so evidently you drove the car home, and then all of a sudden it started to go haywire on you, and then got back to Don and got flooding carburetors. And so I received the carburetors. They were boxed fabulously. Took them out, put them on the bench, pulled the float bowl covers off. I thought one of the floats was off by about 1 millimeter, so I adjusted it. That was a non-event. I checked to make sure everything was clean. I put them on the bench. I put in my test fluid for checking accelerator pump discharge, and the nozzle was shooting a nice spray out of each carburetor, and everything looked fine. I put them on the test engine, and as Don had reported, you had reported, they were puking fuel. The second carburetor was not functioning at all. So when I pulled spark plugs 3 and 4, the engine continued to idle on the front the front carburetor. And yeah, the engine will run on 2 cylinders. Anyway, but this one also was dumping fuel. So I took them off, and at that point, Steve got a hold of this carburetor. I said this was the one that was not functioning, and so he, on his own, he took this carburetor apart and blew all through the passageways. Didn't find anything, didn't blow anything out, and then we mounted the carburetors back on the engine, and Steve did not know that this one was flooding, and I thought he had dealt with it, and he thought I had dealt with it, but neither of us actually touched it. He did not know this. It was when I described the issue of flooding carburetors, he thought I was primarily talking about this carburetor. So he went through this one, blew it out, checked everything. So we put them back on the engine, crank up the engine, and they run just fine. This one's not flooding, neither one's flooding. And then we start getting dripping out of the accelerator pump discharge nozzles, and that's due to this check valve down here. There's the check valve has either a steel ball or a brass ball in it, and we seem to think the steel balls work a little bit better. So he went through about 15 or 20 of these check valves, all used. We're just trying to find a good used one to put in there to stop the dripping. So that was taken care of. And then went to test these things, and this one would not operate at all. And he opened it up, and the float level had changed. So I had checked, float levels have been checked by Don. I checked the float levels here. Steve then we ran the carburetors, and then this one wouldn't work, wouldn't process any fuel. So he pulled the float bowl cover, and he said the float level was off. And so I can't even explain that. So the third, 3 people checking the float level anyway. So he resets the float level. I wasn't here when he did it, so I don't know if it was higher. I mean, it was low, so that not enough fuel was getting into the bowl. So put this back on, and next thing I know, the carburetors are running just fine. Now, did we fix anything? We did replace the accelerator pump diaphragm here, because when he first figured out that there was no fuel getting in here, we assumed it was due to the accelerator pump diaphragm. So we put a new diaphragm in here, not realizing it was a float. So once that didn't work, then went in and checked the float level, and so that's what cured that one. So the like I tell people, the Solex are French carburetors from the 1950s, and it's state-of-the-art French design and execution, and for what that's worth. And so I tell people Solex is the reason fuel injection was invented, because of their people got tired of their carburetors. But they're still in business. You look them up on you Google them or Wikipedia them, and they'll give you their history. They're still around doing mopeds. Anyway, so the bottom line is, I don't know that we fixed anything, but these are running just fine. And I don't know if the carburetors are possessed, or if it's just atmospheric conditions, or phases of the moon. Anyway, so now I'm trying to think if we did anything. The accelerator, the pre-atomizers were fine, even though they were puking fuel. It was not because they were loose or anything. And we didn't find any particles, anything in the float bowls indicate there's a problem with the gas tank. So anyway, after all that talking, this is also part of the cold start. I mean, these things have not been started since yesterday, so I'm going to start them now. We're going to see what we get. Let's see here. Trying to think. Okay, we got the chokes were fine. I readjusted this lever. This was off a little bit. So in addition to when you activate the choke, you're also activating the throttle linkage, and so you're actually squirting a little fuel in there. So you have the option of depends on your car and the carburetors and the temperature, but I usually just give them making sure we got fuel. I'll make sure the fuel is pumped up over here. I'm off the cam on the priming lever, so I'm going to move the engine. Let's see what we got here. All right, back on off the cam, priming the carbs just to make sure we got plenty of fuel in the float bowls. Yep, okay, got fuel. So I usually will just give it a one squirt here, and then switch on full choke. Alright, so obviously it doesn't need a stroke, just activating the choke is enough. So I'd flooded, as you can see, fuel came out there. That's part of the learning process. So even cold, they're idling and working. I'll get it up to operating temperature, and we'll check our airflow. just checking response and how they operated. They're getting close to operating temperature, but just they run amazingly well. Waiting for the radiator to get up to temp. We're close, 130, 132, so we're getting close to temp. Now then, adjusting these, checking adjustments. Going to use the synchrometer, and you can see I don't have a strong enough spring on here, so that's why the idle went down. I just pushed on that. The spring I have on there is pretty weak compared to the factory spring. So we're going to check a couple of things. Disconnect the carburetors so they're running independently of each other. And of course, Steve already adjusted these yesterday, so we're going to check our airflow. We got 6 here, 5 here, so we can adjust that by increasing or decreasing, depends on what our mood is. Idle seems to be pretty good, so I'm going to back off. Bring the idle down just for fun, so we're down to 5 there. 5 and change there. Next we'll check our airflow in the second barrel. Should be minimal airflow. That didn't even move the needle practically, almost like around 1 at the most. Again, needle didn't hardly move there, 1.5. Make sure that's closed. I have not adjusted the counterweights on the second barrel over here. You need to adjust those. Do that finally last after getting your idle speed. So 1.5 there. Anything below 2 is gravy. So that's it. Then we do the idle mixture screw, and you get your best running at idle. Screw it in. These are very sensitive, so you just screw this in a little bit. I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'm going to move the camera so you can see what's going on here. You see, we have just a very little amount. Engine starts to stumble. Back it out a little bit. Engine starts to stumble. We go back to our midpoint. And you can adjust these on your own engine. I'm adjusting these to this engine, and you certainly can adjust them to your engines. Those adjustments are not cast in stone. They can be fiddled with as need be. But if you have any questions, you can certainly just mark where they are initially and just use that as a reference point. Put a little felt tip mark on the top of them. And then, of course, you got to worry about your linkage. That's why there's a turnbuckle here, so you can adjust the linkage where when you snap it in place, the idle doesn't change. And revving, you don't get any popping and spitting, which would be lean conditions. So if that was the case, you'd open these up a little bit more. At this point, they're fully functional, and I don't know what we did to make them better or make them run, but they do run. And for carburetors I did 20 years ago, they still work fine and just do what they're supposed to do. And I wish I could tell you exactly what we did to change things, but I can't. It's just the fun of old carburetors. Try a hot start. Now while we're here, we'll look in the throats. See, these are back dripping again. This one's not, and this one is, so I'm going to experiment with some more check valves right there. This doesn't affect the operation, but it should not be happening, so I'm going to do my best to cure that. And I may rebuild one of these check valves. So that's where it stands right now. We are 99% of the way.